Hello and welcome to the Blood and Pigment channel. Here we're back with another ship review. What ship are we talking about today, Dan?
We are talking about the Balandra, Joseph. It's one of the 18th century sloops that comes in the two-player starter set. The Balandra is a popular type of single-masted sloop that was used by merchants, sailors, even some militaries. How does the Balandra fit into the game, Guy?
In Blood and Plunder, the Balandra is a 2-deck ship that costs 10 points and has a draft of 5.
The Balandra's max speed is 4 inches. It has a sail setting at 4 and 3 and 0 and anchored. Its windward value is 0 and its turn value is 4.
The Balandra has a hull fortitude of 4 and a hull integrity of 5. It takes 15 hits to drop this ship to 1 fortitude. The Balandra's rigging is fortitude 3 and the rigging integrity is 5.
The Balandra's main deck can hold up to 23 models, 6 cannons, and 4 swivels. Its poop deck can hold 14 models, 2 cannons, and 4 swivels.
The ship has several traits: lightly built, fore and aft rig, shallow draft, and simple rig.
The Balandra can also be upgraded with reinforced bulkheads for 3 points, sweeps 2 for a single point, and a topsail for 2 points.
So this is one of the new ships from the Raise the Black Kickstarter, and probably a lot of people have it. There's 2 variations you can make from this plastic sloop. How do you guys feel about this ship in the game? We've had a few months to play it now.
Well, I'll start. I like how it looks. I love its clean lines on it, and there's a lot visually interesting it has with it. It has multiple different figureheads, multiple different options for the back. The rake on the mast looks cool, and all in all, I really like how it looks in the game. It's how it plays, though, is to me it is a smaller sloop.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. I think the sloop has long been one of the best ships in the game, in my opinion. 14-point sloop, just a little bit bigger, not as lightly built as this one. It can take a little bit bigger cannons. So this is a really good ship for smaller games, in my opinion. Can't pack quite the heavy punch with cannons or use field quite as many men, but it can do a little bit of everything, and it can do all of those things pretty well in the 200 or less game class, I would say. What do you think, Dan?
I would agree with you. While at 200 points with the right factions and units, you can pop this thing down with all 4 pairs of cannons and all 8 swivels and have a nice little gunship, but it really is not meant for that kind of role. This is something that about 150 points, 200 maximum, is good for if you're learning how to play at sea and for amphibious games. It's a good ship to kind of learn how to play the game at sea on, because it's really easy to use. But yeah, once you get into that 200-point mark, the resin sloop is kind of the way to go.
Just because you can get more heavier cannons, or?
Yeah, because the resin sloop can bring 3 pairs of medium cannons, which shred just about anything else in its weight class, essentially. I think out of all of them, I think the Corvette can hold up to 4 pairs of medium guns, I think, but it's also got really low fortitude.
Yeah, with the cannons getting a bit of a buff or just playing different, it changes the math as far as how tough these ships are. But, I mean, 4 pairs of light cannons is 8 damage dice versus 9 damage dice for 3 pairs of medium cannons. So it's just a different setup. It's not that much more powerful, but the 3 mediums is awfully nice all at once. But this is pretty remarkably heavily armed for how small it is. Those 4 swivels on both decks. That's the savage part of this ship for me.
It feels really good dumping 24 dice on a deck.
Yeah, it's horrible.
It is not an efficient use of actions, but it's really fun to roll a bucket of dice.
And this is the first ship too, other than the galleon and the 6 rate, that has 8 swivels, and it's on such a tiny ship too. Now, I think the big thing that Dan has mentioned before recording is the crew capacity on this ship. Compared to a regular sloop, we're looking at 43 or 47 models, depending on if you're running cannons or not. And this one only carries 37 total models, and that hurts.
That's still pretty good. That's a lot of men.
It is a lot of men.
I rarely fill up an entire deck on a regular sloop, or at least the front deck. It's a pretty big deck.
Mm-hmm.
And if the starter box comes with 25 models total, you can fit them all on here if you want. So especially as people start to get into the game, this is a great ship to start with. As you start to get up to 200, 300 points, you might need to augment or get a bigger ship or 2 of these ships. But for anything under 200, I don't think that 37 model limit is a penalty. It's just, that's a lot of men. That's enough to play a pretty hefty, meaty game with. But don't expect to necessarily take over a Spanish treasure galleon with it.
Yeah, the main thing is just when you're doing the force builder, you want to make sure your ratios are right, just so you make sure you're not accidentally cheating. I've done that before, where I just squeezed one extra model in because I miscounted on my sheet and didn't want to go through and print out another sheet. For under 200 points, the max unit size is what, 8 models, so you can fit plenty. And then once you get into 200, where it bumps up to 12, that's where it kind of gets tricky. But this is, in my opinion, it is the best ship for amphibious games. It's nice and cheap. You won't necessarily need reinforced bulkheads. You can take them if you want, but it's really quick, really fast, really small. That's where I really think it shines.
Good turn radius.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these traits and stats and what they actually mean. We whipped through them real fast. Yeah. So we got a standard speed of 4. Most ships have that, unless it's a really fast ship. We got a windward of 0. That means you can just go straight up against the wind, not in the wind's eye, but you have no penalty going against the wind. It's really nice. You can outmaneuver a high percentage of other ships. And you got a turn of 4, which means you can turn just as fast as you can sail. So this is kind of max maneuverability on any ship. So that's all good. We got a draft of 5. That's really good too, because that's the lowest draft you can possibly get. You have to roll a 10 when you're going over a shoal to get beached. But we have shallow drafts, so you have to roll 2 10s. So this is never going to get stuck on a shoal in normal situations. So that's a strength. How about the fortitude for the hull and rigging?
They're identical to the fortitude is identical to a regular sloop. The rigging is fortitude 3 and the hull is fortitude 4. 4-5 is okay on a smaller ship like this. It is again the same as a sloop. The rigging on the Balandra is actually more stable in its integrity than the regular sloop, with a lot more dots. 3-5 for rigging is really good. Really good. It means that if your opponent is going to try doing the big brain play and going after your sailing ability, they're going to have to chop through a lot of it. It's a bonus compared to the regular sloop.
Yeah, it's kind of nice. And the sail setting is slightly different too. Let's talk about that.
Having a 3 instead of a 2.
Yeah, it has 4-3-0, and the regular sloop has 4-2-0. So it's actually, you can get going from a standstill to a 3 speed with just one action, not even a dedicated action. That's where that simple rig comes into play. Usually it's a dedicated action. That's all your unit can do to raise sail. Here you can just do it with one simple action and then keep working on something else. So for just hopefully one action, you can go from 0 to 3 and do something else and then have one more action later to go to 4. That's very impressive.
Yeah, better than going to 2, especially if the ship does ground itself for some reason. Going from 0 to 3 is a boon.
The privateer sloop has 3 as well in the middle, 4-3-0, just like that. Interesting.
Yeah, barring the resin sloop, this is probably one of the better of those smaller ships.
Oh yeah,
it's really easy to play with. You can swap sail settings. If you need to cross the wind, it's relatively easy to do it in. It's very forgiving if it's your first time going to sea.
The other trait, we looked at lightly built. That's kind of a bad trait. It can't have any medium guns, only light cannons and swivels. Also, it doesn't offer hard cover, and that's kind of a big one. The regular sloop offers hard cover, so you're going to lose 10% more guys off your saves on this. You'll be saving 6s usually instead of, 7s instead of 5s for most models. But you have the option to use the reinforced bulkheads for 3 points, which is a little steep. But that brings it up to 13 points, which is only 1 point less than the resin sloop.
And in my opinion, unless you're doing a boarding action, or not a board action, a amphibious game, you always want to buy the reinforced bulkheads. It's always going to be useful.
Mm-hmm.
You always want to save models. The only time when you win it is like when Dan mentioned wanting to just unload everybody on land as quickly as possible.
Yeah, 3 points if you save 1 extra model. So if you think you'll take at least 10 hits before you get into melee. A fore and aft rig makes tacking easier, so you can go across the eye of the wind real easy. Cannot perform the box haul maneuver. It's not a big deal, but it's a good trait. Shallow draft, we talked about that. And then how about our upgrades, Dan? What do we got there? Anything tempting?
Real quick for all the newer players, don't be afraid to try and cross the wind. It's a good skill to have, and it's a good trick to have up your sleeve. And in this ship, it is so easy. I encourage everybody to try sailing upwind at least once and figure out how it works. So you're not caught off guard if you lose that attacker defender roll.
That's something you can do in this ship that'll give you an advantage if some frigate is trying to chase you or something.
You can zigzag across that wind's eye like it doesn't even exist. It's hilarious.
Yep.
Although I did do that in a 6th rate frigate. Remember that guy? That was fun.
Yeah, that was expert sailors with a wheel.
Yeah. So we got the reinforced bulk guys. We talked about that. What else we got?
We got sweeps 2 for a point, which is it's okay. If you're playing some factions like Spanish Corsairs, they make it sweeps 3, which is cool, but
Sweeps are not really hot in the game right now, are they? So
Yeah, they're not. Yeah.
yeah, unless you're like doing like a thematic thing. If you're playing a game where nobody's allowed to sail, it's all sweeps only, then bring it. If you're doing a theme game, but otherwise, eh. And then top sail lets you do the box haul, which is my favorite maneuver in the game.
it's pretty fun. People don't expect it either, so that can be fun, but don't buy it unless you plan to use it.
You haven't lived until you've box hauled into a boarding action.
Like backing a U-Haul truck up.
You got the pirates in the back yelling beep, beep, beep.
But the top sail does put the price at 15 points, which at that point you might as well get a heavy bark instead.
Yeah.
We have a lot of options for ships now, so you can choose this one or the sloop or the privateer sloop or the heavy bark. They all use kind of the same sloop hull. But another big factor in this whole conversation is actual expense when you're collecting. And this ship, what does this retail for? 30 or 40?
I believe it's 39 right now.
And the resin sloop is 82. Yeah, these prices change as resources change that they make them with, but that's pretty cheap. It's a nice kit. It's not hard to put together. It takes a little more work than the resin, but you can customize it a little bit more. But to pay half of what you pay for the resin ship makes it a lot more attractive to probably 90% of players out there. So I highly recommend this ship. I mean, you probably, if you're listening to this, you probably already have it because you have.
Yeah, you probably own 2 of them.
And for modeling people, if you're looking to differentiate it from its sister ship, the Bermuda sloop, you can just leave off the extended bowsprit. That's what I did. I kind of looked at the art in the book, and it shows that it's got a much shorter bowsprit than the Bermuda sloop, so I left it off. You don't have to model your ships how you want. If you're looking to differentiate, that's the easiest way to do it.
You probably know more about sails than me, but I do have to make fun of you for saying bowsprit because it's actually bowsprit.
I didn't want to say it. Yeah.
It's okay. I don't know what it's called. I just know the sound it makes when the wind hits it.
There's no I after it. It's bowsprit.
Well, mine's haunted, so it's a bowsprit.
No, okay. You got a ghost ship. Fair enough. Any final thoughts? Should we rate this ship? Do we rate ships? I forgot. It's been too long.
The Firelock does need to make more ships. We ran out of ships to review. I give this 5 out of 5 sloops.
I will give it 4 out of 5 sloops, only because it's subpar at 200 points, which is like the standard I find. But for all other applications outside that niche, it's a good ship. Anything smaller than that, good ship. Take it, enjoy it, sail it around. Don't be afraid to sail upwind.
I'll get about 8 out of 8 swivels. I think it's a really good ship. It's not great once you get to the huge point level, but if you do 2 of them, I think you're still okay. It's a very piratey ship. Pirates use small ships like this, so it's very authentic. It's really good for a smaller crew, for people getting into the game. 15 to 30 models, so I would highly recommend the ship. It has a high power level for how big it is and a good affordability level. So we should.
It's also super easy to customize because it's plastic. If you have random cool plastic bits laying around, you use plastic glue and glue them on. It's super easy to customize.
And next time we'll talk about the Bermuda sloop, which is the same hull, but quite a bit different ship.
It's a speedy boy.
For more Blood and Plunder ship overviews, you can go over to bloodandpigment.com and check out all our articles there. We have all the other Blood and Plunder ships, I think, covered with lots of more detail than you might even want. And we also have articles on the nations and factions and terrain building and painting guides and battle reports and painting contests and campaigns and all sorts of good stuff over there.
Check out the rest of our YouTube channel as well. Subscribe and ring the ship's bell so you can say no for uploads. We also have a Patreon.
And as always, keep your dice ready, the win at your back, yar har.